I'd love to enhance my OnBase Workview application by leveraging data from a REST API. Not as difficult as you think. So this Snack Bites episode is courtesy of one of our subscribers, and they asked, is there a chance that you could do a Snack Bites on an external class using a Unity script? Probably. I have this idea of creating an external class with a Unity script that will hit a REST API to get the data and populate that external class. I'm not too sure, however, if that idea will work. Well, you got a lot of requests in there. We've got an external class, we've got a REST API, we've got Unity scripts, and I haven't done this exact scenario myself yet, but I'm always up to a challenge. So I say let's do it. First, let's ask the question, why? Because that's what we do here. We don't just show you how to do it, but we set up these scenarios so that you can understand why you should do this in your system. And we will have all the resources from this specific episode up on our Datum Evolve resources page. I'll throw the link in our descriptions so that you can import everything that you see today and be able to play around with it in your system. What I love about Workview applications is they're all about data, retrieving data, storing data, relating data to other data, and sometimes documents. But there is a real use case for having an external class that reaches out to a REST API. Imagine now your users have access to that external data outside of their system that they can now relate back to their main class. Now, I've primarily used this in data sets, but hey, let's build out a whole class. Why not? That's what we're here for. So this walkthrough is going to be a little bit more in depth because I figure that you're going to want to build something very, very similar in your system. Plus, you can kind of see how my mind works, whether you like it or not. For our external class, we want to identify a REST API that will return sets of data, maybe multiple records. And since we like to have fun when we do these types of experiments, I was thinking that why not do Pokemon? Because everybody at some point has used or has had some sort of an experience with Pokemon. For me, it's my kids love Pokemon, so it's going to make me look like a superhero when I build them an application where they can now see all the Pokemon and their abilities. For the sake of our project, we want an open API. We're just playing around, we're just experimenting, so an open API that doesn't require authentication is exactly what we need. Let's keep it simple at first, and then we'll add in authentications maybe in another episode of Snack Bites. So what I like is, I like this site. It's called Mixed Analytics. It has a list of a bunch of different open APIs. And as you can see here, we have one for Pokemon. So now in our project, we have a data source. And now let's see how that data comes back. How is it structured? Does it have our multiple records that we need to build out our external class? Looking through our list of open Pokemon APIs, I found an endpoint, and this one looks promising. So I'm going to send the request, and as you can see, we have a nice package here in the response. We have an ID, we have the Pokemon name, we have a couple of different tags here for parameters for how to identify some unique values here that will really look good in an external class. So now let's move on and let's build our application. Now our time is precious, so I am not going to show you how to create a Workview application from scratch, step by step. I feel like Hyland University has a lot of videos and it's a great resource for you. They have a video on how to build a Workview application from scratch, a very simple one, but it'll help. I'm only going to focus on external classes. So here I'm going to create a class, new class. It is going to be external. We're going to call it Pokemon 3. It's kind of like a cooking show. I already created another class that I'm going to use. It's already pre-baked later on in this demo. So here you're going to select Unity script. Now, this option can be used not only for REST APIs, for anything. If you're calling out to another database, you can use that Unity script to then fill your object. And here at the bottom, you will see a checkbox for configure Unity script. This will automatically create a Unity script for your external class. I'm going to leave that unchecked because we have some attributes to build out first. And I'm going to cancel out of this because we don't want that Pokemon 2. So now it just came out of the oven, our Pokemon class. We have our attributes that I've already set, but I wanted to highlight that what I did was I looked at our response and I identified which values we need from this response in our external class. And I built out the attributes for those. Now, the name doesn't have to match directly the response. You can name these anything, but I wanted to highlight that within our ID, we know that this is going to be a unique value. So kind of the best practice is to identify one data point that you can use as a unique index. And then the other thing to highlight is that we want these data types to be as close to the data types that are being returned. What you want to do is I usually take a screenshot of all these attributes because we are going to need the exact value of the name when we write out our script. And that is a good segue to now let's configure our Unity script. So we're going to go in, we're going to modify, we're going to click that little checkbox that I talked about earlier, and it's going to bring up our project. And here, I want to point out a couple of libraries that I've added to this script that allows us to call out specifically that REST API. Here, you're going to need the system.net.http, and you're going to need the newtonsoft.json. Could be JSON. I use those terms interchangeably. I find that JSON is a little bit fancier. And we want to now build out our Pokemon class. So this is what's going to be populated in our JSON deserialization. That's a big word. Deserialization method. So we want these property names. Now we want them to match our response from our API. Now, this isn't case sensitive, but you want the name to match. Now, if you can't get the name to match for some reason, you can then assign it a JSON property, and I left the code up here on how to do that. Not case sensitive, but you want the name to match for our deserialization. And now I'm gonna skip through the templated methods that Studio gives you. And we're gonna go and we're gonna build out the method that gets the list of our Pokemon. So here we have the URL of our get method to our endpoint. And now we're creating a HTTP response message by calling out using that API, and we're bringing back the results. In our next line, we're gonna check the status code. So we wanna make sure that our status code is 200. That means that it was a successful call. And once we have a successful status code, which is 200, we are now going to fill our variable, our response data string, and then we're gonna call what's in our JSON library to convert, to deserialize that object, and it will automatically, within their method, within that library, it's gonna populate the list of Pokemon off of that response. It's pretty cool. Takes out a lot of other work that you'd have to do with coding. And then now we're gonna return that list of Pokemon, and we're gonna be able to use that in our other places within our code. Now we're gonna jump back up to what is provided in the template. There are two methods, one for creating an external object. We're gonna skip over that for now, and we're gonna go to the one that deals with the external filter. Why do I do that? Because I like to see the filter results, make sure all of that is working before I go in and configure what's going to be seen within the object. So you're going to go to on Workview, populate external filter results. Again, another mouthful. And we're going to call our fetch Pokemon list method. This is going to return that list of Pokemon from our REST API. We're going to do a null check, make sure that it actually returned results prior to processing those. And then for each Pokemon now, we want to fill those objects within our external filter. So here within this first line, we are telling it which ID is going to be the unique ID for that filtered object. So we're passing it through that Pokemon ID. That will be our unique value that later on we will use when we populate that object. And then our next set of code is we're just setting those attributes. Now, this is where you want to go back to that screenshot of the attribute values because these need to be an exact match of that. And then at the end, we are going to add that object to our results. And this is the base of our filter. So now I'm going to go in, we're going to skip the object code for now, and we're going to go and we're going to test our filter. All right, so we're now going to jump back to our Pokemon class, and we're going to create a filter. And this is a filter for all of our Pokemon. So you want to select essentially all of our attributes. And what I like to do, and I want to highlight a trick. If you set the fixed constraint of object ID not to be null, then your preview will execute that REST API and it will give you a preview of everything that's being returned and our script being executed. So that's a pretty cool tip. So now we have our all Pokemons filter and we have to create a view. So if someone selects an object on that filter, we want to be able to present them with a view for them to be able to see the Pokemon data. So I've created a very simple view as it's loading, watching the blue bar go round and round and round and round. So we have the view created, and now what populates that view? To do that, now we have to go back to our script and we're going to go up to the method that I told you to skip over before to view our external objects. Now, this code is going to be very similar to the code that you created for our external filters to be able to show our objects in there. So we're going to call our method that we created to bring back our list of Pokemon. We're going to check to see if that list is null. If not, we are now going to loop through all those Pokemon again. Now, because we've selected one object in our filter and we only want to present them with the information of that specific object, as we're looping through, we are making sure that the argument, the external object ID of what was selected by the user within that event matches the ID that's being returned in our REST API. So we're isolating down that Pokemon. And then we are setting the attributes of our view here in this section. So we are going to set the ID, the name, the height, the weight, everything that's on our view. And that should work. So now when someone selects it, they'll see it in their view. So I'm going to go into our Unity client and test all of these out to see whether or not it works. So I'm jumping into the Unity client. I go down to filters. We're going to see the all Pokemon filters that we created. I'm going to select that. And it now returns, wow, this works. So this is getting all this information from that REST API. And we have Pokemon. So now I am going to select, really to test our view, I'm going to select Charizard because that's my son's favorite. And we have a Charizard, fire type, part of the Charmander family. Again, I'm kind of a novice at the Pokemon game. So we have it. So we have our filter working, we have our view working. All right, so we have our Pokemon external class, and I want to take this solution one step further. I want our users to have the ability to assign themselves as trainers and then be able to select their own Pokemon. So to do that, and I know this wasn't in the request, so I'm sorry, but I have to build out actual solutions here. So I've created a trainer class, which just has a trainer ID and a trainer name. And then I've also built out a simple association class. So this links our Pokemon to our trainers. And within that association class, I've created a filter, an embedded all Pokemon filter. So this is our external class filter. So within our trainer view now, I have placed that embedded filter and given them the ability to add Pokemon from our list of Pokemon. So let's see if that works. And it kind of works because I've already built it and tested it. But it's already been baked. So here in all of our trainers, my son got to play with this a little bit. His name is Henry. What he did was he created a trainer object for himself, and then he went through our external object and assigned Pokemon to himself. And I'm just talking as this wheel spins because I reset cache. This is not the call of the API that takes the time. All right, so he assigned himself all this Pokemon, but if he wanted to assign himself more, he would just click the add to list, and you can assign yourself as many Pokemon as you would like. And now it shows up in their list. Yes, I know that was a lot of information to take in, but it was a very fun experiment. Thank you so much for putting in the request in our comment section. I know that there's probably not a use case within your organization for having a Pokemon external class that reaches out to a REST API through a Unity script, but I'm hoping that these concepts you can use towards your specific use case within your organization. I know that this application is probably going to be only one that my kids use, but hey, it was fun to do. Now, in honor of Pokemon and the Japanese origin of Pokemon, our snack today is Japan. I had already opened it. But they're called Japan, and they're dry roasted crunchy peanuts with a delectable soy taste everyone craves. So let's try them out. They sound like marbles. I don't know if you can hear that. So they're probably going to be crunchy. Here we go. Oh boy, they are. Oh my goodness, those are crunchy. Hopefully you don't chip a tooth while eating these. They're that crunchy. Kind of like soy nuts. Just get regular peanuts. They taste exactly the same. Or go out to Japan and get yourself soy flavored peanuts.